How does a man rise from relative obscurity to become governor of Lagos State and eventually president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? How does one individual become so influential that his political imprint appears on some of the most significant chapters of Nigeria's democratic journey? Whether admired or criticized, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's rise is one of the most extraordinary political stories in modern Nigeria history. And perhaps that is exactly why God sent him. For decades, Nigerians argued about weak institutions, governance challenges, electoral controversies, economic hardship, and the widening distance between government and ordinary citizens. Some people view these concerns as exaggerated political complaints. Others believe they were real but too deeply rooted to ever be addressed. Then came an era that forced millions to pay closer attention. An era that made ordinary citizens follow court proceedings with unusual interest. An era that made young people study the Constitution. An era that turned conversations about governance into everyday discussions in homes, markets, buses, and offices across the country. Suddenly, Nigerians were no longer discussing problems in theory. They were examining them, questioning them, debating them, trying to understand where they came from and why they persisted. Perhaps that was the assignment all along. A nation rarely seeks serious solutions until it understands the full scale of its challenges. How can people demand better governance if they've not reflected on what poor governance looks like? How can citizens appreciate the value of strong institutions until they begin asking whether those institutions are functioning as they should? How can a country recognize qualities it desires in its leaders without first experiencing leadership that sparks intense national debate? Perhaps Nigeria needed a national mirror. Perhaps it needed a giant spotlight. Perhaps it needed a presidency that will compel millions of Nigerians to be more politically conscious than ever before. And what a spotlight it's been. Today, Nigerians ask more questions than ever before. They scrutinize public officials more intensely. They challenge political narratives more aggressively. They participate in public discourse more passionately. Supporters may see this period as one of difficult but necessary reforms. Critics may see it as evidence of deeper structural problems. But regardless of where one stands politically, it is difficult to deny that many Nigerians have become far more engaged with the future of their country. Perhaps that was the lesson. Not necessarily how government should be run, but why citizens must never stop paying attention. Not necessarily how institutions should operate, but why institutions matter. Not necessarily what leadership should be, but how important it is for a nation to carefully define the qualities it seeks in those who govern it. Which brings us back to the original point. Perhaps Bola Ahmed Tinubu was indeed sent by God. Perhaps he was sent to expose uncomfortable questions that Nigerians had postponed for too long. Perhaps he was sent to force a national conversation about accountability, competence, governance, and the future of our republic. Perhaps he was sent to help millions of Nigerians discover, through comparison and reflection, the kind of leadership they believe the country needs. Because one thing appears increasingly clear. Many Nigerians are no longer merely asking who should govern them. They are asking how they should be governed. They are asking what values should define public office. They are asking what standards should be expected from those entrusted with power. They are asking whether the Nigeria of tomorrow can be built with the same ideas, habits, and political culture that shaped the Nigeria of today. That may be the greatest irony of all. For some Nigerians, this era has become less about one man and more about a national awakening. An awakening that has made them more conscious of their challenges, more conscious of their responsibilities, and more conscious of the qualities they believe must define the next generation of leadership. If that awakening endures, history may record that the most lasting consequence of this period was not simply who occupied the highest office in the land, but the fact that millions of Nigerians became determined to seek something fundamentally different from what they believed was no longer working.
Tinubu has been very good at unveiling the true nature of people. So all the horrible people who had been busy protesting to be men of God, one can see them clearer. That's because of Tinubu. If Tinubu were to be a man whose evil was ambiguous, if it was possible to say maybe he's not bad, it would have been very easy for them to continue pontificating and sounding like men of God. But the fact that the man is so unrepentantly and clearly evil, and they have found accommodation for him, and they are the ones excusing the evil, explaining the evil, looking to normalize the evil, they don't even mind taking off their own garments of honor to cloak a filthy felon. Tinubu can only be thanked though. I thank God for Tinubu.
This is Beyond the Headlines. Subscribe today for more videos like this.